Hello, I am currently being filmed by Angus. You remember Angus, don't you?
It is me. Hello.
And today I'm giving you 5 tips on how to get the best out of your gimbal setup. And with that, tip number 1, movement. There are a variety of different shot types you can do. You can have the camera follow in front of you, like what we have going on right now. You can have the camera behind your actor for an over-the-shoulder style shot. You can have the camera rotate around you for some Michael Bay style dolly movements. Push into a subject, push back out from the subject. You can track something from side to side. You can watch your cameraman nearly fall over. You can use the Movi as a handheld rig for really any type of shot. Just sort of wave it around and it will smooth down your hand movement or your arm movement, and you can even increase the sensitivity for a more shaky cam kind of look. Really, your imagination is the limit. Number 2 is to play around with the software and the motion settings of your camera gimbal. Right now we're using a Movi M5 which has something called majestic mode, which is really good for a single person operator, and you can go into the app and you can adjust the smoothness and the window of responsiveness to find what works best for your preference and for different situations. You can find various tutorials online, and all sorts of gimbals have them, DJI ones, other ones, they all have some sort of software utility for adjusting the gimbal's controls, and there are various documents, tutorials, videos you can watch, but personally I find the best way is to just play around with the settings. Do it when you're not on a shoot, but when you are on a shoot, have a look at the settings, maybe note them down, and after a while you tend to work out what kind of things you want on your gimbal. Tip number 3 is to shoot with a shallow depth of field. Now, a lot of gimbal shots typically have quite a large depth of field with everything in focus on a wide angle lens, but with modern autofocus technology like Canon's dual pixel autofocus or the systems you find in the Sony mirrorless cameras, that's no longer necessary. Now, it does mean sacrificing a bit of control. You've got to let the camera decide where the focus is going to be. But personally, I would rather have some nice cinematic shallow depth of field with a very high or fast aperture than have everything manually controlled myself. Right now, this shot is being done with a 35mm L lens at f1.4, and it's tracking very nicely. So I am very happy to use a setup like this in a paid corporate video or a short film. It's worth noting that you will be best with a lens that is made by the same manufacturer as the camera. So if you're using a Canon DSLR, then you'll want to use a Canon L lens. Tip number 4 relates to actually using your gimbal. Now, whilst they may only weigh between 10 to 20 kilograms with a few accessories, after you've having to hold it out in front of you all day, they can get a bit heavy and you can lean your back around and your arms get really sore, and it's not the best way to get good footage. You can get an Easy Rig or an Easy Rig knockoff, which comes over the front as like a backpack with a string coming down to support the weight of the gimbal. Those are expensive and they do limit your range of movement, so I would suggest just going to the gym, lifting some weights, building up some arm and some core strength, and you should have no problems using the gimbal.
So, you speak, and the sound of you speaking echoes.
After a couple of months of weightlifting, I now find it fairly easy to operate the gimbal for most of the shoots I do. for even longer takes, such as 3 to 5 minute takes, I can hold the gimbal out in front of me, lift it up, move it around without really much difficulty, and it's not like my back is incredibly sore at the end of the day. So I would recommend a bit of gym and weightlifting instead of buying an expensive, complicated easy rig. But if you're using something really heavy and expensive like a Movi Pro, then an easy rig might be more necessary. And finally, tip number 5 is to buy the right type of gimbal for your users. Now personally, I prefer the bigger dual-handed setups because they have a bit more stability than the single pistol grips. But I guess if you're a travel blogger, videographer, or you are really keeping budget in mind, then you can get a single pistol grip. I hope you found this gimbal tip video useful. If you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing so as not to miss any new videos. See you later.